Envelope had been sitting on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I kept walking past it, picking it up, setting it back down. It was a birthday card, the kind with a sailboat on the front and a blank space inside where you're supposed to write something meaningful. I'd bought it for my son's 35th birthday, which was coming up in 2 weeks. I hadn't written a single word yet, because every time I uncapped the pen, I didn't know where to start. How do you tell your son that you're proud of him when you're not entirely sure you've earned the right to say it? My name is Walter. I'm 63 years old, and for the better part of 4 decades, I was a man who was better at building things than being present for them. I built a regional logistics company from a single delivery van and a borrowed garage in Dayton, Ohio. I built a client list that eventually covered 7 states. I built a retirement account that let me sleep easy at night. What I did not build, not carefully enough, anyway, was the relationship with my son that I assumed would always just be there, solid and waiting, the way the house was always there when I came home late from work. My son's name is Derek. He's tall like me, quiet like his mother used to be, and for most of his adult life, he's taken whatever I offered him without question and without much gratitude, which I always told myself was just the way young men were. My ex-wife Sandra and I divorced when Derek was 19. It was not a dramatic split. There was no screaming, no affair, no single breaking point. There was just the slow, quiet accumulation of 2 people who had stopped choosing each other, and one morning I moved into a furnished apartment on the east side of Dayton, and that was that. Derek stayed close to his mother. That was fine, that was right, I told myself I understood. What I gave Derek instead of time, over the years, was money. Not recklessly, I want to be clear about that, but consistently. When he needed first and last month's rent at 22, I wrote the check. When his car transmission failed at 26, I handled it. When he and his girlfriend Amber decided they wanted to open a small landscaping business at 31, I invested $40,000 without asking for a business plan because he was my son, and I believed in him the way fathers are supposed to believe in their sons. The landscaping business closed 18 months later. I didn't ask for the money back. By the time Derek turned 34, he and Amber had been together for 6 years and were engaged to be married. I was happy about this. Amber seemed steady, practical, the kind of woman who made lists and kept them. She called me Mr. Kowalski until I asked her 3 times to call me Walt. And then she called me Walt with the careful politeness of someone following instructions. I told myself that was fine too. The wedding was scheduled for the 2nd Saturday in October. Derek asked me, and this surprised me, moved me more than I expected to be his best man. Not just to attend, to stand beside him. I said yes before he finished the sentence. That summer, I made a decision. The logistics company had sold 2 years prior. I won't tell you the exact number, but it was enough that I didn't need to think about money for the rest of my life, and then some. I had a financial advisor named Roy who kept sending me proposals for investment vehicles and diversified portfolios, and I kept filing them in the drawer under the sailboat birthday card. What I wanted to do with some of that money was something concrete, something that would matter to Derek in the way that only a real, physical thing can matter. I bought a house. It was a 4-bedroom colonial in Springboro, about 20 minutes south of Dayton. Good school district. Finished basement, a backyard with a maple tree that had to be 100 years old, the kind of house a young family grows into. I paid $640,000 for it, cash, and I had the deed put in a trust with Derek's name on it. The plan was to hand him the keys at the wedding reception, in front of everyone, as a gift, not a loan, not an investment. A gift, free and clear. I told no one, not my sister, not Roy. Not the woman I'd been seeing casually for about a year, a retired school teacher named Donna who lived in Centerville and made very good chili. I wanted it to be a surprise. I was so pleased with myself I could barely stand it. 8 days before the wedding, my phone buzzed at 11:47 inches the morning. I was at the kitchen table eating a sandwich and reading about the Reds' pitching staff, which had not improved since the previous season and showed no signs of doing so. The text was from a number I didn't recognize, no area code I knew, not saved in my contacts. 7 words. Don't go to the wedding. Call me. I stared at it for a long moment. My first thought was that it was spam some new variety, more personal sounding than usual. My second thought was that it was a wrong number. My third thought, the one that made me put down my sandwich, was the strange specificity of it. The wedding. Not a wedding. The wedding. As if whoever sent it knew exactly which wedding I was thinking about. I called the number. It rang 4 times. I was about to hang up when someone answered. Walt. Not a question, a statement, a voice that knew me. It took me a few seconds. The voice was older than I remembered it, rougher, like a gravel road that had been repaved once and was breaking down again. But underneath the age it was unmistakably familiar, in the way that certain sounds are wired directly into your memory rather than your thinking brain. "Gary," I said. "Gary Fenton. My former business partner. We had built the company together for 11 years, and then we had a falling out over a contract dispute that turned into a lawsuit that was eventually settled out of court, and I hadn't spoken to him since. That was 9 years ago. I had assumed, without much sadness, that I would never speak to him again." "Yeah," he said. "It's me. I know this is strange. I need you to listen to me." I almost hung up. Whatever instinct kept the phone at my ear, I'm grateful for it. "I'm listening," I said. "He told me that his daughter, Becca, had been close friends with Amber since college, that they still talked regularly, the way women do, sharing the kind of details that men tend to keep to themselves. That Becca had called him 3 nights ago, upset, because she'd heard something at dinner with Amber that she couldn't stop thinking about. Amber and Derek," Gary said. "They're not planning a marriage, Walt, they're planning a transfer." I didn't say anything. He told me what Becca had told him, that Amber had spent the dinner talking about the house, my house, the one I hadn't told anyone about, which meant Derek had told Amber, which meant the surprise had never been a surprise, at least not to both of them, that Amber had described, in specific terms, how the property could be refinanced within 60 days of the title transferring, and that the equity could be pulled out and moved, and that if the marriage didn't work out when the marriage didn't work out, was apparently the way Amber had phrased it, Derek would retain full ownership because it was a pre-marital gift. She said, "When?" I said. "That's what Becca told me." I was quiet for a long time. Outside my kitchen window, a neighbor's dog was barking at something in the alley. The ordinary Tuesday sounds of an ordinary neighborhood. "There's more," Gary said. There was more. Derek had apparently, sometime in the past several months, asked me to sign documents that I had signed without reading carefully enough. This is the part that is hardest for me to say out loud, because I am not a stupid man, and I have read thousands of contracts in my professional life, and yet with my son, I had done something I would have fired an employee for doing. I had trusted without verifying. Derek had told me the documents were related to updating my estate plan. He had an estate attorney friend, he said, who was doing it as a favor. I needed to just sign where the tabs were. I had signed. I had not read past the first page. What I had apparently signed was a durable power of attorney, not the standard kind, but one with specific language that, according to Gary's account of what Becca had told him, gave Derek authority over financial decisions in the event that I was determined to be incapacitated. And there had been a second document, something about a beneficiary designation on a brokerage account. "You need to call your own attorney," Gary said. "Today. Before the wedding. Before you hand him anything." I sat very still. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. I didn't mean it as an accusation. I genuinely wanted to know. After 9 years of silence, after everything that had passed between us, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because Becca was crying on the phone, and she asked me if someone should tell you, and I was the only person she knew who knew you. And because whatever happened between us, Walt, you didn't deserve this." I called my attorney within the hour. Her name is Patricia Osei, and she has handled my legal affairs for 12 years, and she is the kind of woman who does not alarm easily. She was alarmed. She told me to bring the copies of everything I had signed. I drove to her office that afternoon with a manila folder and a feeling in my chest that I can only describe as the specific grief of discovering that the person you were most trying to love was the person you were least paying attention to. Patricia reviewed the documents while I sat in the chair across from her desk and looked at the framed photo of her children on the wall. The power of attorney was real, and it was broad. The beneficiary change on the brokerage account had been processed, a mid-sized account. Not the largest I had, but significant. The language in the POA didn't require a medical diagnosis of incapacity. It required 2 signed statements from parties familiar with the principle's daily functioning. Patricia pointed to a line I had not read. I had not read it because my son had handed me a pen and told me where to sign, and I had believed him the way I had always believed him, the way you believe the person you have been trying, imperfectly, your whole life, to do right by. "The good news," Patricia said, "is that the house hasn't transferred yet. It's still in the trust. Can we undo the POA? You're competent. You're present. Yes. We can revoke it today." We revoked it that afternoon. Patricia drafted a letter. I signed it in her office. She filed it before 5 o'clock. The brokerage account was more complicated. There was a process, It would take time. But Patricia was confident that, given the circumstances being that my son had guided me to sign documents under false pretenses, we had a strong basis to contest the designation. I drove home in the early evening. The light was doing that thing it does in Ohio in late September, going gold and a little sad at the same time, the way the end of things tends to look more beautiful than you expect. I did not call Derek. I want to be honest about why. Part of it was that I needed time to understand what I was feeling, which was not simply anger, though there was anger, but something more like the vertigo of realizing that the story you have been telling yourself about your own life is not the story that was actually happening. I had been telling myself that Derek and I were finding our way back to each other, that the best man invitation meant something real, that the house would be the beginning of something new between us. I sat with that for 2 days. On the third day, I called a moving company and asked them to come to the Springboro house, which was still empty, still waiting. I had them remove the few furnishings I had bought in advance, a couch, a kitchen table, nothing major, and put them in storage. Then I called the realtor who had sold me the property. Change of plans, I told her. I want to list it. She was surprised. She asked if everything was all right. Everything is fine, I said. I just realized it wasn't the right house for who I was buying it for. After I hung up, I sat for a long moment in the empty living room of that colonial in Springboro, with the 100-year-old maple visible through the back window, and I let myself feel the full weight of what I was mourning. It wasn't the money. The money was the least of it. What I was mourning was the version of October I had imagined, the reception, the envelope, the look on Derek's face, the moment when all the years of distance might finally close into something that felt like family. I let myself mourn it, and then I got up and walked out and locked the door behind me. I did not go to the wedding. I sent Derek a text the morning of the ceremony. It said, "I won't be there today. I think you know why. I hope someday we can talk about it." He didn't respond for 6 hours, and when he finally did, it was 3 words. "You're being dramatic." I read it twice and put my phone face down on the counter. Amber called once, from a number I didn't recognize, about an hour before the ceremony was scheduled to start. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave one. I spent that Saturday doing ordinary things. I went to the hardware store. I had lunch alone at a diner I liked on the far side of town, the kind of place with laminated menus and good pie. I called my sister in Columbus and talked to her for an hour without mentioning any of it, just asking about her grandkids and her garden and whether her husband's knee had improved since the surgery. It hadn't. We talked about that for a while. In the evening, Donna came over and we watched a movie, and she fell asleep on the couch. And I sat there in the lamplight watching her sleep and feeling, unexpectedly, that I was not as alone as I had feared I would be. The house sold in 11 days. It was a good market, and Patricia had advised me to price it fairly, and 2 offers came in within the first weekend. The buyers were a couple in their early 30s with a toddler and another on the way. They wanted to close before the holidays. I said yes. From the proceeds, I restructured my estate plan thoroughly, this time with Patricia walking me through every page of every document before I signed anything. My will was updated. The POA was reassigned to my sister, who is a retired accountant and is constitutionally incapable of being manipulated by anyone. The brokerage account beneficiary designation was contested and ultimately corrected after a process that was tedious and unpleasant and completely worth it. I also made one other change, because Gary Fenton's daughter had cried on the phone for the right reasons. And Gary had made a call he didn't have to make, and some things deserved to be acknowledged in a concrete way. I called Gary. We had coffee for the first time in 9 years at a place near the University of Dayton. He looked older, as I suppose I did too. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. We talked about the company, and about his daughter Becca, and about his retirement, which had apparently involved a badly conceived plan to raise chickens that had not gone as hoped. By the end of the second cup, we were laughing about the chickens, and the 9 years felt like a very long, unnecessary detour. I had an account that I'd set up years ago, originally earmarked as a fund for Derek money I had been quietly adding to for years, with the intention of giving it to him at some future milestone. There was a little over $47,000 in it. I transferred half of it to a college savings account I set up in Becca's daughter's name, Gary's granddaughter, who was 4 and apparently very interested in dinosaurs and deserved every possible future option. The rest I donated to a nonprofit in Dayton that provided housing assistance to families who had nowhere else to go. I did this not as a gesture against Derek, but because the money had been meant for something generous, and it still could be. Derek and Amber are still together, as far as I know. He called twice in the months after the wedding, once in November, once just after Christmas. Both times the conversation was short and orbited around the subject of what had happened without ever landing on it directly. He said he didn't understand why I'd pulled away. I said I thought he did. He said I was being unfair. I said maybe. I said I hoped he was well. I meant that last part. I want my son to be well. That impulse doesn't go away no matter what. It sits in your chest like a stone that's been there so long it's become part of the landscape. But there is a difference between loving someone and funding the life they have designed at your expense. It took me too long to learn that. I was a man who gave money in place of presence, and then was surprised when the money became the only thing that mattered. I am not entirely without blame in how Derek turned out. I know that. I sit with it. What I know now, at 63, that I did not know at 45 or 50 or 58, is that the most valuable things I have left to give are not in any account. They are Saturday mornings and honest conversations and showing up without an agenda. They are the coffee with Gary, which has become a regular thing now, Tuesday mornings, rotating between 3 different diners. They are evenings with Donna, who has started leaving a spare jacket at my house, which I take as a good sign. They are phone calls with my sister about bad knees and backyard gardens. They are lunch alone at a counter with good pie, and the afternoon light coming through the window, and the knowledge that the life in front of you still belongs to you. I still have the birthday card, the sailboat one. It's still blank inside. Derek's 35th birthday is in 2 weeks. I've thought a lot about whether to send it, about what I would write if I did. I think I would write something simple, something true, something like, I have not always known how to be your father. I am still learning. I hope you are well. I hope we find our way back to each other someday, when you're ready, when I'm ready, when the time is right. I haven't sent it yet. Maybe I will. Maybe that's enough, the fact that I still want to. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually think about it. If you were me, would you send that card? And here's the harder question. Is it possible that Derek, in some way I can't fully see yet, was shaped by the same pattern I kept repeating, giving things instead of myself, and teaching him, without meaning to, that things were what mattered? I don't have a clean answer. I'm not sure there is one. Tell me what you think in the comments. I read every one. And if this story stayed with you, if it felt like something you've lived or something you've witnessed, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Hit like if you made it all the way here. It means more than you know.